everyone? Welcome back to another video. If you don't know who I am, that means you're new. I'm Mark. Let's go with y'all. Go check out my other videos. Check them out. Check them out. So, originally I was going to do this video yesterday, but technical difficulties led to a delay. So, let's get right into it. You guys read the title. You saw the thumbnail. What are ghost guns? And why the government hates them so much. So let's get into it. If you are new to firearms, you might hear the term ghost gun being pushed by anti-gunners. And, it sounds like a real scary term. You know what I mean? It takes two things that they're trying to, put together, that are both on their own, they're trying to deem as scary. Put them together, and what does that make for you? Something that's supposedly super duper fucking scary. So let's get right into it. A ghost gun, for those of y'all who are unaware, a ghost gun is simply just an untraceable gun. Now, some people are wondering, well, what makes the gun untraceable in that sense? It's not even really untraceable, like they can't tell, like, okay, for example, here's a perfect example, right? Let's say I took, a ghost gun, right? But, it was a 9mm, it was a Glock styled fucking ghost gun, whatever, right? And I go and commit a crime with it. There's going to be markings that, will kind of give them hints. Okay, yeah, obviously 9mm bullet that, limits us down a little bit. Okay. Let me see here. They got a lot of shit that's going on there. They figure it out. All right. They got it. Let's make that clear. So ghost guns aren't untraceable in the sense that you can go commit a crime with them and nobody will have any idea what kind of gun was used or anything like that. Nothing along those lines, like how it's commonly tried to be portrayed as by anti-gunners. But, we're not on another episode of debunking anti-gunners. This is more so just an informative episode. Jesus, I can English. Sorry, it's been one of those days. Just an informative video. There we are. So, ghost guns simply are guns that do not have serial numbers. So, the ATF does not, well, not even just ATF, but there's really no registry or track of them at all. There's no record of them. Why is that? Because you can legally build them. Now, here's where it gets kind of funny to me, because our government is trying to ban ghost guns, but they don't seem to understand that if it is 100% legal, 100% legal for an individual such as myself, even with no form of licensing. You need zero form of licensing for this to build your own firearms at home. There is nothing illegal for that. Building your own firearms for personal use is not illegal by any standard. You do not need a licensing for it. So what is the problem with ghost guns? Well, the problem is that the government believes, oh yeah, well, a majority of crimes now are being done with ghost guns. Here's the thing. They love saying a majority of gun crime is being done with whatever weapon they conveniently are trying to push a ban for. At the time, it'll be ghost guns. If something happens with an AR-15, they'll say it's AR-15s. They will. It really is just meant to be a scare tactic. And that's the thing. The reason why the government doesn't like ghost guns is due to the fact that there is no serial number on them. They have no way of regulating them, due to the simple fact that we don't need their permission to build our own firearms for personal use at home. We don't need a licensing. We don't need any of that. And that is why the government hates it so much. The government wants to be in complete and utter control of anything firearm related. Why is that? Is because they are worried that the second they get tyrannical, there's going to be a bunch of more people with guns than they thought there was going to be. Think about it like this, guys. I know this is a very, 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 I cannot express and stress enough how high of an exaggeration of a number this is. But let's say for each firearm that did have a serial number, there was a ghost gun. The reason why this scares them is because that would mean, let's say 200 million, right? 200 million guns that do have serial numbers, they're expecting, okay, yeah, that's what we would have a fight against if we decide to go tyrannical. Oh, wait a minute. They can't account for how many ghost guns there are. So in all reality, it could be 400 million. It could be a ton. It could be so it could be an infinite number of guns. And that's why they don't like it. They like being in control of us. They like saying, "Hey, we know who has what, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to plan accordingly." That's the thing. I don't know. People get upset when, you talk about ghost guns and they're like, "Oh, but it's an untraceable gun." Why the fuck does the government need to trace it? If I built it at home for my own personal use, what does it matter? I built a slingshot too. I'll build a fucking slingshot. I can take some glass and sharpen it and make a fucking, a blade out of it. Does the government need to know about that? Do I need a serial number for those? Like, no, I don't. Of course, we're going to pull. Whatever, fucking. I'm not in the mood for this shit right now. Whatever. Not in the mood to deal with that annoying vape right now. Regardless, the government hates not having control. That is the main reason why they despise ghost guns and people who advocate for them, people who build them, because they cannot regulate and have control over them because they don't know what kind of gun it is. They don't know what caliber it's even chambered in. They don't know anything unless you're to do something dumb with it, like commit a crime with it, or tell them. You don't need to tell them because you don't need a licensing to build your own firearms at home. That's just how it works. And what upsets me about it is it's not like I'm sitting here telling you guys some hidden wisdom that is impossible to find. If you're like me and you have an iPhone, I literally searched up before I started recording just to be sure that I'm not mistaken. Can an individual build their own firearm at home? The first thing that comes up is the ATF's website saying you do not need a license as an individual to build a firearm at your home for personal use. And that's essentially what these ghost guns are. These ghost guns are guns that have been built by individuals who don't need a license because they're building them at home for their own personal use. So once again, this all boils down to the matter of fact of them trying to say, "Oh, well, we want to take more of your rights away." What we have already deemed as not illegal, not a crime, no problem with it, we're going to try to now say is a crime. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's unconstitutional. And the truth of the matter is, it's something that we shouldn't accept. We shouldn't sit here and keep dealing with that shit. All right? The truth of the matter is that, one, the Second Amendment was meant to never be infringed upon. Meaning, there should be zero government regulation on it. If you want the truth, my only real opinionated reason for why serial numbers should exist is for manufacturer purposes, so that way they can identify which batch it came from, and for individual identifier purposes, meaning I can look at, for example, my Smith & Wesson SD9VE. I literally have the serial number for that memorized. I have the serial number not for all of my guns memorized. However, I do have a good couple of the digits memorized, the first few or the last few. You know what I mean? So that way, let's say, someone else has the exact same gun as me. I can look at the serial number and be like, "Oh, that's mine. This one's yours." Bam. Those are the only real reasons I see a need for serial numbers, when in all reality, there should be zero government regulation on firearms. Now, some people may argue, "Oh yeah, well, what about stolen guns?" Well, if you're putting yourself in a position where you might receive a stolen gun, that means you're probably interacting with some very shady and untrustworthy people that you shouldn't be getting firearms from. That seems obvious. However, beyond the point, that is yes, of course. However, it's not exactly like you can really, here's the thing. People love to say, "Oh yeah, you can look up whether or not a gun is stolen based off its serial number." I'm not too sure about that because I've looked everywhere, couldn't find a singular website that actually allowed you to do that. You can do it and you can look it up. You can try it yourself. Hey, if I'm wrong, please, by all means, let me know down below. However, the whole argument against ghost guns is because they don't have serial numbers for the government to identify them, when the government shouldn't need to identify them because there should be zero regulations on it, as it says no infringements, or excuse me, shall not be infringed. So what does shall not be infringed mean? No, zero infringements. So what does that tell you guys? That tells me, at least, that serial numbers are only good for the two reasons I mentioned earlier: manufacturer identifiers and individual identifiers, meaning so the manufacturer can see what batch it came out of. Let's say you get a batch of Glock 19s, right? You get two batches, Gen 5 Glock 19s, whatever, right? You want to know which batch is which. You want to know how it came from, which came from which. Oh, yeah, this came from this factory, so we want to keep it in this batch. You want to know that shit. So what does that mean? You need a little identifier. How would you do that? Is with a serial number. That makes sense. As I said, same goes for an individual. God, I can English today. An individual identifying their firearm. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. It's completely understandable. But for government regulation, it makes zero sense, in my opinion. And I would love to be disproven on it. Now, with that being said, I don't want to sit here and keep going in circles. But the overall point of the video, as I mentioned before, is simply ghost guns are essentially just firearms that do not have serial numbers on them. So the government deems them as untraceable, almost trying to make it seem like, it's much scarier than what it actually is. When in all reality, owning a firearm without a serial number is not illegal, as you can literally build them at home yourself for personal use without a license, completely legally. Completely legally. So that's essentially what ghost guns are. That's why the government doesn't like them, as well as they want the pure level of regulation. They want control. With that being said, y'all make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, hit that bell. When you hit that bell, hit all. And because you agree with me, all the government is looking for is regulation. All they're looking for is controlling our Second Amendment rights, especially trying to make ghost guns seem like they are some big, scary threat to us, when in all reality, you, me, we could all sat here if we wanted to and build one at home for our personal use, completely legally, no license. It's absolutely ridiculous that they're trying to pull this shit. If you agree with me, make sure to check out all my other videos. Y'all make sure to stay legal, stay safe, stay dangerous. Have a good one, y'all. Peace.